Okay, back to where we left off yesterday. Basically, Noah's Devarim hurting somebody with words. So the last thing we learned is that even, let's say somebody has a nickname, even though they're used to it already, they don't get embarrassed from it, but your intent is to embarrass the person, you're not allowed to call them by that nickname because you're hurting the person. The next din over here in a similar vein is very similar, but it was called Genevas Das. Genevas Das means misleading, stealing their mind. That's literally, Genevas Das means you're stealing their mind. Even if it's totally irrelevant, it doesn't change in any way. For instance, the simple example is, they sell to a non-Jew, non-kosher meat, that wasn't shechted, and they tell the guy the meat is shechted. Now, as far as the guy is concerned, he can eat treifa meat. That's not a problem. So in addition to the fact, what's wrong with that, it says in Allah is another problem, because he might think it's kosher meat, he might sell it to a Jew. Because he thinks it's kosher meat, he might sell it to a Jew. But in addition to that, it's also mamish genevas das, even though it's totally irrelevant, you have to tell him that it's not kosher meat when you sell it to him. Or if you have something that you're selling to somebody and there's a blemish in it, to blemish goods, halachically you have to tell the person what the blemish is. Otherwise, if you're selling it, now there's ways of getting around it. If you have to, you sell something to somebody, say, I'm selling it to you as is, that's what people do today. So then automatically, whatever it is, he's accepting it. So then you don't have to tell him there's blemishes. But if you're just selling something to somebody, and there's a defect in the car or anything that you're selling to the person, halachically you have to tell them the mum. Then there's an interesting question. What happens if it's kosher b'di'evet? Or like something which, sometimes in halacha it says, if there's a big loss of money, so then you can rely on those people that permit it. So let's say there's something which is kosher because it's a big loss of money otherwise, and halacha says you can rely on that leniency. Do you have to tell the person that you're selling it to, I want you to know this is something that's it was permitted because it's a big loss of money, or can you just not tell him anything? So most poskim say you have to tell him, because he might not want to eat it like that. He might not want to be more religious or whatever. So in all these cases, it's what's called Genevas Das. You're misleading the person. Same thing has to do with age. Same thing with a lot of these things. We discussed them already. That a lot of these things, you're misinforming the person. Misinformation, by the way, is called Genevas Das, which is biblically forbidden, both for a Jew and a guy. Okay, that's okay. Next is another interesting halacha. You're not allowed to do business with things that are not kosher. It's biblically not kosher. For instance, it's forbidden for a Jew to own a non-kosher meat market. Treifa meat is biblically treif. So a Jew, even though you're not eating it, so technically a Jew would not be allowed to own a non-kosher restaurant. You wouldn't be allowed to. If that's, now, what happens if you have one second? What happens, let's say you have a slaughterhouse, a shlachtes, yeah? All the big kosher slaughterhouses, sometimes the animals end up not being kosher. The shechita didn't work out well, or they found the blemish, in the animal that would render it treifa. So what are they allowed to do with those treifa animals? So the din is, in those cases, they are allowed to sell the treifa animals, because their business is not making treifa meat. Their business is selling kosher meat. So then it says clearly in halacha that if they happen to get, or a fisherman, so a fisherman cannot own a lobster company or a shellfish company that is treif. But what happens, a guy's a fisherman, and he's going and he's putting out those big nets, to catch fish, and in the nets, they're also not kosher fish. But that's not what he's doing. He's going in a place where there's normally trout or whatever, the kosher fish, and now he's going and he's bringing up non-kosher food. So then those things he's allowed to sell. But you can't originally make a sale with that. What do you want?
How are we defining ownership? So if you buy you buy stock in a big company.
Okay, so we spoke about that many times. Stock in the company is not called ownership. The only time, halachically, the way the majority of contemporary poskim say, if you have a seat on the board and you have voting power in the company, that's called ownership. If you don't have, you're not on the board, you don't have voting powers, then it's not called ownership. That's the heter of after Pesach, why you can buy from these big corporations, Ralphs and all those, because it's a corporation, and they found out that most of the people, the vast majority of the people on the board are not Jewish. What?
Is there an issue eating at a kosher restaurant if you know the owner also has a non-kosher restaurant or a chain?
Can you eat in a kosher restaurant where the owner has a chain of non-kosher restaurants? Yeah, if there's a good hashgach on it, which is very, very complicated to do, by the way, because a lot of real good hechsherim will not give a hechsher to a kosher market if the guy owns a kosher restaurant, let's say, if the guy has a bunch of non-kosher restaurants, because the facts have been proven. It's not some. It happened already. They were caught many times, right? Of them bringing from one restaurant middle of the night. They bring from one restaurant to the next, and nobody knows. And again, the sin is getting caught, not the cheating like that. So they were not caught. So and they found there was big problems with that. So many places would not give a hechsher on it. Or you have a lot of issues like that. You know, different places, different stores have different things. So again, another interesting thing. You're not allowed, if you have a non-Jewish worker, an employee, you have somebody who works here is not kosher, not Jewish, I mean. A Jew is also not kosher. You're not allowed to eat a person's treif. So now the question is, am I allowed to feed him non-kosher food? Am I allowed to feed him non-kosher food? He's a guy, but it's my business. Am I allowed to feed him a non-kosher meat? I'll tell you where you have a very big problem, and like everything else, when it comes to halacha, you'll always find people that find leniencies and loopholes. But a guy has a nursing home. A Jew owns nursing homes, right? California, in Chicago, all the Jews own nursing homes. It's a big business. Now you have so you have a kosher nursing home, kosher food, so it's not an issue. But what happens if you have a nursing home and it's a non-Jewish nursing home, but it's your business? So are you allowed to serve your non-kosher patients? You're allowed to serve them non-kosher food. So if you want to take cold-blooded, technical halacha, the answer is no, you're not allowed to. They find already loopholes. You sell the business, you sell the business. It's not your business, but there is a lot of issues with that. If you have a worker, now what can you do? So let's say this is a very practical case. The guy has a company, he has workers, and he feeds them lunch, right? So he can't order non-kosher food for them, because then he's giving it to them. But if you give them, let's say, a credit card, or you give them cash, let's say, okay, and you tell them, buy what you want. So then it's their money, and they're buying for themselves. And you're not buying the non-kosher food for them, they're buying it for themselves.
And they order it, and you just pay whatever they order it?
If they order it, and you pay for it, that's allowed. Because then again, you're not giving them non-kosher food. They chose to get non-kosher food. But if you are the one ordering the food for them, then it's a problem, because then you are giving them non-kosher food, which is halachically forbidden.
So if you have a choice of getting gift cards, the only choices are restaurants that are not kosher.
You have to give them only gift cards to the kosher restaurants.
So if you have a redeemable something points,
Yeah.
you can't redeem those points. What can you do with those points? There's only one choice, restaurant.
Huh?
If you have redeemable points to McDonald's, so let's sell them.
You could sell. Yeah, I was going to say that. You can sell them. You can sell them to a guy. But then you're not doing business with. But by the way, this din only applies things which are biblically treif. Things which are rabbinically treif, the poskim write, that you're allowed to do. Yeah, that's with Rabbanan. He also says, then you're allowed to do business with them. What?
There's no issue if the boy is ordering something that you're biblically not allowed to benefit from.
But again, he's ordering it for himself. In other words,
You're not benefiting.
no, I'll give you something. No, let me give you an example. If you order a cheeseburger for somebody, for a non-Jew, so it's also meat and milk, and it's hot, so the meat and the hamburger and the cheese gets cooked. It's not some piece of sliced cheese. But it melts in. I mean, it's hot. So you couldn't buy a cheeseburger for somebody, even for a guy, because number one, then you're benefiting from it. You can't give a gift, something which is forbidden to benefit from, you can't give a gift with that. Because if I give you a gift, the Gemara says, it creates a relationship between the two people. And because it's a relationship between the two people, that's called benefit. And that wouldn't be allowed. So if it's something like a cheeseburger that you can't benefit from, besides the fact that you're not allowed to give them even just plain meat, that you are allowed to benefit from, here's an additional thing, you're also getting benefit from something you're not allowed to get benefit from.
Even if it's just like stuck out to homeless person. You're giving a meal. You buy them a meal, you give them a meal. It's just,
Yeah, but if you pay, you're ordering the meal, then you're giving it to them. If they order the meal, then you're just paying for it, okay? So you're not giving them the treif, they're taking the treif. You're just making it available for them. But no, it's because a lot of times in businesses, people do feed their, and it's much cheaper, obviously much cheaper to buy non-kosher food for them than it would be kosher food. But then there'd be an issue in halacha how you can do it.
How about for your customers when it's not your employees? Same thing?
If you buy a customer,
Yeah, like, during the Xmas time and stuff, we send gifts, baskets and stuff, so.
yeah, but one second, you're talking about, you just touched upon four different issues. Four different issues. Number one, are you genuine? Forget this. Can I give a non-Jew a gift before Xmas, we'll call it, Xmas?
So we give it as a New Year's.
Okay, so you can't give it on that day. So you can give it for the New Year's,
Yeah.
which is also not so simple, but the way,
Or Thanksgiving.
because technically the origin of New Year's is because that was the day of his bris. If he was born December 25th, yeah, guys, Xmas and New Year's are always the same day of the week. Like a baby's born Sunday, the bris is Sunday, right? So his bris was Sunday. His parents were probably, I don't know who his parents were, something else. But
after Sunday.
yeah, whatever. Leave it up to your imagination. So originally New Year's, because again, I'm not sure if somebody might say I'm wrong historically, but the calendar, the way we had it originally, was not starting the year in January 1st. March 1st was the beginning of the year. That's why February has only 28 days, because it's the last month of the year. So therefore you finish the 365 days and a quarter days. So February 28th was the last day of the year. Therefore, when there's a leap year, so you add it on to the last day of the year, which is February 29th, because right, it's 365 and a quarter. So really, in the Gregorian calendar, I don't know what I'm talking about, but that calendar, New Year's wasn't January 1st. There are people that say, how did January 1st get into the picture? Because that was his bris, and they made that into the new year. Okay? So, but regardless of that, nevertheless, halachically, Xmas is a religious holiday. Kratzmach is a religious holiday, and New Year's isn't. Halachically. Okay. So therefore, like in New Year's, you can have a later minyan. And Kratzmach, Xmas, you're not allowed to have a later minyan, because then you're celebrating a religious Goyish holiday, which for a Jew is Avodah Zarah. So it's very complicated. So then number one, so you can't give gifts on that day. So you can give gifts for New Year. That's number one. Something which is forbidden to benefit from, you can't give as a gift either. Because again, Gemara says, when you give a gift, then you're creating a connection, a relationship between the two people, so it's a benefit. Selling it for sure not. So therefore there's a whole question, halacha, can you give non-kosher wine? Can you give it to a non-Jew? And the answer is really you can't. Because stam yenim is asur b'ano.
What if you're like closing a business deal or something?
So you give them kosher wine.
If they don't want kosher, what if they like?
They never tasted it. Tell them it's great.
Give them scotch.
Give them a bottle of Manischewitz, you know.
We get gifts too from a company that's give non-kosher wines, like 3, 4, 5, so our throw it away.
You might.
Why isn't that like the slaughterhouse that ends up with a chef thing that went wrong?
No, but that's two separate issues, doing business with something treif. This is something else. Can I give a gift of something that I'm not allowed to have benefit from? It's two different things. One business is, I'm not allowed to do business with things which are biblically non-kosher. That's one. Then there's a second issue. Can I give a gift to somebody and then even if I get a whole bunch of things, you can't say I can give it as a gift. When I'm doing business and I get this tray for animal or tray for fish coming up, so over there the situation is it's not my business. So then I can sell it.
If I'm in the schmatter business and somebody gives me gift baskets,
Gives you a schmatter.
I'm not in the wine business. So what's wrong with giving?
No, but then the question is the wine is forbidden to benefit from. It's nothing to do. It's not so pashut. If you hold stam yenim is asur b'ano, then you wouldn't be allowed to. Not always is stam yenim asur b'ano. Machat shinu zo ma'aseh me'amer ve'vamayim, given shevala gal